Earlier this year, I went back to visit Iceland for the first time since I moved away. I used to live there, and in fact, I thought that it would be my forever home. But life had other plans. Returning to see my community impacted me on such a deep level, but I also arrived with a mission. As a documentary filmmaker, sometimes you become absolutely obsessed with a subject matter, and handicrafts and historical dress is definitely mine. During my project, I got to meet Hildur, who is an incredibly knowledgeable and talented maker of Icelandic national costume called Þjóðbúningurinn. She invited me to her studio in Hafnarfjörður called Anriki, and I got to experience a wonderful presentation on the history of Icelandic national dress and how it shifted and transformed from the 1700s until the 20th century. Now, this isn't the last time you're going to be seeing a video featuring Hildur. I have another even bigger project coming out next year, but I'm afraid you'll have to wait and see what that one entails. I've been working on it for a while, but I've been keeping it a secret. For now, I hope you'll enjoy listening to such a fantastic presentation and examining the fine details of truly impeccable craftsmanship, or should I say craftswomanship in this case. I hope you'll feel as moved by these garments as I do. And by the way, I recently became a part of the creator-owned streaming service Nebula. They're a big reason why I'm now able to travel more to shoot documentaries on these very important topics, and I have so many adventurous video ideas planned for next year that they're supporting me with. My episodes, including this one, are released over on Nebula 3 days early and completely ad-free. If you'd like to get 40% off an annual subscription costing just $36 for 1 year, then be sure to click the link in my description. Now, let's jump into the documentary.
Welcome to Anriki. This is our collection of historical dresses and traditional dresses and national dresses, as we often call them. I'm a tailor and a dressmaker. What I'm enjoying so much in this is trying to make research on how these old dresses were made, because we have always been wearing dresses in Iceland. We can't only wear bikini. It's a little bit too cold for that. To be able to make those researches, I've started to learn history at the university, to be able to find the sources that are hidden and find, for example, written source or a piece of garment or a picture or a painting or drawing, and put those sources together. And then very often I make a dress that we haven't preserved anywhere. They're just new here, but these are what I think then is a historical dress. Those historical dresses are not preserved in whole, because either they were used until nothing was left, or they just were used for something else. So here we have those dresses from the 18th century. The 18th century was very bright and colorful, and maybe it was because to dye black was not easy. The black was only for the high society. It was normal for women to have red and beautiful blue garments. What I've been also studying now is knitting in the 18th century. That's because I found a written paper from 1760. It's not a complete recipe, or what do you call it? Pattern to knit from, but it helps to find out that they did knit jackets, cardigans like these here, and they knitted trousers and stockings, of course, and húfur, caps, of course. This has been a wonderful voyage through the history, and here you can see, for example, men's outfit, a knitted jacket or a cardigan, and a vest. And those amazing colors are dyed with these natural plants we have in the garden, and of course indigo, which was imported to Iceland in the 18th century. So here we have all the flowers that were in the garden then and are still growing in our garden. And some of those plants we don't like very much in the garden, but they are very, very beautiful to dye with. And what's amazing is the technique. Now I know, by talking to colleagues in the other Nordic countries and further, that in Iceland we knit it in a technical way because the history tells us that raglan sleeve didn't appear in knitting until after 1900. But those patterns show us that the Icelanders did knit raglan shoulder even in 1760. And here we have a lady in a daily dress from the same period, and she has also this type of garment, knitted jacket, and those are all knitted in around circle needle, and then it's cut up in the front. But at that time, they didn't have circle needle, so I had to find out how they did it, and luckily I found another piece of paper written from the 19th century, and there's said start with 54 with masks on 14 needles. So knitting a garment, a big garment like this, is the same technique as knitting stockings with 4 needles and the 5th goes around. Since you have a larger thing to knit, you put on more needles, and here you have 40 needles and the 15th goes the circle. So very technical, and it has surprised a lot of people that didn't know anything about Icelandic knitting, included me, because I didn't know of this until I started to study this. And then it's all started with a knitted peisa, which I found at the National Museum. It's preserved there. It's said to be from 1890, and I was able to study it and write the pattern down. So it was 2011 that I started with this, made the recipe, but made the pattern, and then I started to knit it in 2016. And this one has 1,200 masks, lykkjur.
Stitches.
Yeah, 1,200. Yeah. So, and it has this beautiful thing here, which is called stakkur, and this is just a decoration. So here we have 1,200 stitches, and it's knitted with a 2-ply fine wool, and the size of the needles is 1.25 European size. The pattern is quite perfect. Everything fits, and the raglan is. It's unbelievable that this was originally made in 1890. So it's easy to remake. It looks like everyone in the household knew how to knit. Maybe not a garment like this one, but people were knitting all the time. And during winter time, that was the main job, to knit and weave. But knitting became more and more important. Here we have a daily dress, which includes a shirt in white cotton or linen, or just basic material. And then we have what we call upplutur. But upplutur is basically the Icelandic corset. This is very modest decoration, but it was not always like that. This is more, maybe not the richest woman in the household, but she has beautiful clothes on anyway. And she has her skirt without any decorations, and then she has an apron. And she would have been wearing a húfa, which was really necessary because it was cold. So this húfa was used to keep the head warm. This is maybe a woman from around 1760. A little bit more decoration here. We have another one with a wool shirt, and then you have knitted sleeves. And here you have a upplutur, which is in the time period of the empire fashion. It has a high waist here, and it's not because it's for a child. It's in a real size, and it's a copy of a dress that's or pieces. I found this upplutur at the National Museum, and I found a piece of embroidery, a piece like this at the museum. So this dress is made, put together of pieces that I found. But this shirt is preserved at the museum, and as you can see, this bag is beautifully decorated with a bobbin lace in silk. So even they had the knowledge how to make bobbin lace, and they had some silk thread to make a beautiful thing like this. And our broderie is wool broderie, and the yarn is dyed here in the garden. So, and she has a jacket, which we call treya, and it has this piece of collar attached to it, and it's decorated beautifully with pearls. And this is the here it's the same pattern here on the belt with pearls. So this is my interpretation. This is a remaking of the original. And then they have all these things like buttons, because the apron is not attached to it's loose like this. So it's hanging here. The buttons are necessary to keep it up here. It goes like this.
And what type of þjóðbúningur is this one?
This would be a fallbúningur. And this is the highly festive dress at that time. But as you can see, it's combined with the same garments. Upplutur, upplutur, shirt, shirt, skirt. And she is wearing a skirt underneath, undergarment, which is not decorated. So probably she could have been wearing several undergarments there, petticoats. And these headdresses that you can see here, they are also necessary for sheltering, for not getting cold. So they probably it started with one linen cloth, and then they started to use 2 and 3 and to get it higher and higher. So it developed into, from a small one, and it became higher and higher as the time went. So here have we a version for a child, and she is not wearing this faldur. She is wearing a little cap, which it's decorated also with bobbin lace and silver and silk. And here you also can see how the fashion in patterns, in embroidery patterns, changes from those not so very much flower patterns, and then it changes to those flower gardens. And there you have a bobbin lace with in wool, and that is our speciality. We didn't have so much silk or linen. They were very capable of spinning very fine wool thread, 2-ply. We see a lot of wool in our embroidery. But then we have also, in English, is golden embroidery, but in Icelandic we call it baldýring. And I think it's so beautiful because golden embroidery is really a huge field, and it's a decoration that is suitable for kings and bishops and the army, admirals. So, but in Iceland women started to make their own baldering. Here, for example, is a decoration that I have remade from this one. And that's the problem here. You have the old pieces that are now going gray and old, but we don't know, they might have looked more like this in the beginning. So, and she has also got here on the back silver bobbin lace. Lot of bobbin lace everywhere, you can see it here. And baldering at the belt. And then we have the oldest preserved fallbúningur, and it's so amazing. It's an amazing story because it's this one. It was made by a woman called Guðrún Skúladóttir. She was born 1740, and she was so known. She was for her skills in embroidery that they named her the mother of the flowers. So beautiful. And if you look at the dress, you can see why. And she also made, from her work, we have also this skirt preserved here. And if you look closely, you can see it's the same pattern, more or less. And this is also a skirt. These are skirts that I've remade, but they are preserved at the National Museum and they're documented as her work. She died 1816. I often say that I first met Guðrún Skúladóttir in 1999 when I went to the Victorian and Albert Museum where this dress is preserved. It was sold from Iceland and in 1809, and at last it was sold to the Victorian and Albert Museum and has been there ever since. There is a story to tell about this dress because it was a wedding dress for the richest family in Iceland. But one of the brothers, he wanted to sell it. He wanted changes. He thought these were very old-fashioned, and so he wanted Icelandic women to start wearing Danish dresses. And the Icelandic ladies didn't want that. But he sold his sister's wedding dress. And sailing from Iceland, the ship burned down and went down in Faxaflói. And people believed that the dress had gone down with the ship. Around 1970, it was found in the museum, Victoria and Albert Museum, and it was saved from the sinking ship because it was in a box or where it didn't sink. So they saved it from the ocean. They picked it up, and the Icelanders just didn't know about this story. I feel like I'm now working with Guðrún Skúladóttir, that was born in 1740. And she's keeping me going. So it's not like we are talking together, but she's often in my mind. And I can't understand doing all this work with all I have, you know, everything is handmade, of course, and I dye the yarn here in the garden and so on. But thinking of what they had in that time, it's amazing what these ladies could do, and the knowledge and the skills. And here, since I was talking about golden embroidery, this here is my interpretation of it. I went there also in 2015 to the Victoria and Albert Museum to take a better look at the dress, and then I draw this up, and you can see it. It's so many small pieces. And my husband, who is a goldsmith, he has now made all the jewelries that are, these are very special, we call it milla, and these are very special. Milla is of course used to close the upplutur, the corset. And normally we have more like these here with a reim or with a string here. More often done like this, but these are very special. And Ási has also made, my husband also made this, what do you call it, belt? And it's just amazing. And these are just recopies from the 18th century pieces. This is also very special. It's made of velvet. All of the jackets that are preserved at the National Museum are younger. They are from the 19th century, and they are all made of wool. So this is how this develops. After the Industrial Revolution in the end of the 18th century, the wool was with a different quality. It is thinner, it's not as heavy, and now they could dye in real black. So what happens when you have, you're able to buy something you didn't before, the fashion comes very black. And then there is another fashion icon that changes completely the traditional dress fashion in Iceland. It's the Victorian period, which was very long. At that time we had a young man that went to study in Copenhagen. His name was Sigurður Guðmundsson, and he studied to be an artist, a painter. And when he came home from his studies in Copenhagen, he came home 1858, he started to work with the Icelandic women, which I think was something they had never experienced before, that a man was interested in their cloth making, in their art, which their only possibility to show their art was to decorate their clothes, and they really did. So here we have the latest fashion in 1855, and then 58, 59, we have a completely new dress, and they have, this is also faldbúningur. The name comes from the headdress, and as you can see, the headdress also changed. Like everything changes, everything is running, everything has to be new. And with this here new dress, there are so many symbols. At that time, we were fighting for our independence from the Danes. So this is the national dress, and this is the mountain lady dress. And mountain lady is all the women in Iceland. And Sigurður wanted every woman to have this dress to show their dignity. And here we have so many romantic symbols. The nature is all over this dress. Sigurður Málari, he said you should be decorating your skirts with old patterns or Icelandic flowers, which they did also. The headdress is especially simple for Iceland. It's this, normally it comes with a white veil, and then here you have a hat that represents the mountains, the ice on the mountains. Then you have this white veil, and that's the snow in the mountains. And then you have this ornament here, Varpa. It's the sun and the aurora and northern lights the nature is here in this cap. So it was rather easy for Icelandic husbands to buy these chains because it was all theirs to decide if they wanted to pay for these chains. But at the same time, this headdress is also the headdress that Queen Victoria imported with her wedding dress. She's the first woman to wear white wedding dress, and she wore veil and tiara. All of the women in the court wear veil and tiara, so it's also very, very fashionable. So this dress became very popular in Islam. It happened very fast at that time. Sigurður the painter, he was also the founder of the National Museum, and he collected those old dresses. It's him to thank that we have those old dresses preserved at the National Museum. It was founded in 1863. I would say if you know something in fashion and dress history, you can see how it develops with the fashion, with the European fashion, how the decorations, the patterns changes. For example, these patterns here, which are very big flowers and a lot of colors and beautiful in its way, but in 1860 they didn't want that. They wanted clean patterns, and here is this one is colorful, yellow and green. Mostly, in some time, they started to use only one or two colors, or thread that was changed colors. That was also very popular. And all these skirts here are made by that fashion. These are the Icelandic national dresses. These are the dresses that Sigurður wanted to be the national dress. It's new, around 1860. It was developed from the old dresses because I think Sigurður Málar understood that Icelanders were not ready to change completely in one day. They had to have something from the past, and that's also easier because a lot of the dresses, for example, this one, old dresses, here's a mixture of, this is the new skirt here with a new embroidery, but the upper part is the old dress. It has upplutur, which is the corselet, and then it has this jacket. And one of the things that changed with the new fashion, Victorian fashion, this is so important for everyone that's interested in this period. And Sigurður said, he wrote about this a lot. He says, in Europe, they don't wear this line anymore. It should look like this. But the bow is not as you can see, it has changed. It has the same ribbons. It has the same decorations here. This is a bobbin lace, but this one is gone. And the jacket is now down to the waist, and you don't need to wear the upplutur underneath, because now they had started to import corsets from Europe. So those women that need the corsets, they just went to the shop and bought their corset.
And what year was this?
This is 1860 and around there. These dresses became so popular, and you can see here all these ornaments. This is filigree, and it's all handmade. This type of belt comes from the old fallbúningur, the old dress. But Sigurður also wanted a new ornament, belts, and for example this one. This is a completely new dress at that time, fashion. You can see this Icelandic flower, sole, here. And then you can see it here. And here it goes on. And up here it's also I'll do like this. This tiara is also with the same pattern. So here you have a completely new idea of a national dress. This is not a traditional dress. It's based on a traditional dress, but it's meant to be a national dress that every Icelandic woman, fjallkona, mountain lady, should wear. And then this starts to develop, of course. And how does that happen? Yeah, well, you get new fabrics. As we know, they started to produce all kinds of fabrics, not only wool. And here we have a silk in this one. And here you can see how the ornament also develops by time. And here you have a cape or a möttull. But Sigurður the painter, he had a different idea of a national dress, and that was a more, not as heavy dress. It should be in a less heavy textiles, fabrics. And here we have it. It's called kirtill. It has the same headdress, but it's easy to make. The fabrics are not so heavy. The decorations, they could be easier. As you can see, Sigurður also wanted them to be in other colors. They could be blue, they could be green, brown, not so much red, but also cream, like this. And these are very light to wear. And those were in the beginning. The first one was worn at a dance in 1871. And if you compare this one to the heavy wool dresses, it's a little bit easier to dance in this one. So they also became very, very popular. So this is also our national dress. And these are the dresses that our fjallkona appears in at June the 17th, our national day. We honor this, the upprutur that women have been wearing for so many centuries as a corset. Women, when they didn't have to wear that anymore for the new skautbúningur, I forgot the name, to tell you the name. It's called skautbúningur. And it's also, the name comes also from the headdress because we call this skaut. So when they didn't have to wear this upprutur anymore, they started to try to wear it in a different way. And not everyone liked that because they were wearing their undergarments. So their parents, their foremothers, they didn't like them to appear in their undergarments. So it took 50 years to become a special dress. It was the young women in the beginning of the 20th century that really made this dress their own. And this is the high fashion based on those traditional dresses, and it's very symbolic because still Icelanders were fighting for their freedom from the Danes, and women were also fighting for their liberation. They stood out and they said, we are Icelanders, we are young, and we are showing this in our garments. And that's the history. That's how history runs. We show it in our what we are wearing in our life. Yeah, how we live, what we wear, what we use. At the 20th century, they started here with the old decorations, but as time passed, the goldsmith started to make it even. All those flowers here is filigree, and in around 1940, every woman had to have her own complete set. And this is not wearing the right belt, but she would have filigree belt made of filigree decorations as well. And also this part here is only to hit the where this thing and the cap comes together. And this one, hólkur, is often decorated. You could see it here. No one is the same. These are 20th century nylon and polyester fabrics. Of course, we are making our clothes of fabrics and material that you have. at your time. You can't make dress of something you can't have. They started to import all those fabrics. Women kept on wearing their traditional dresses, but used everything they could find. And in the end, we have there what we call peysuföt. And this section there, those black peysuföt, they come all from the 20th century. But the origin of this dress type, costume type, is this knitted cardigan from 1760. Started with this one in around 1800. They started to knit them in blue, and then it had changed and got this piece here at the backside called stakkur, wearing this big húfa, very cozy. And then it's changed into this fine peysa, which I explained here earlier. Also keeping this stakkur here. And now you can see that the cap has got smaller. And then you have those, they follow also the Victorian fashion, and when they start to become black. And as you can see here, this is fine wool, and this is a stakkur at that time. But you have all those things in it, but it changes. And the fashion, hair fashion also. Here you have braids. And you have this small decoration. In the beginning, the peysa was closed, hooked up completely here. So you didn't have to wear anything underneath, but probably she would have been wearing a upplutur, the corset. But when you could buy the corset, you stopped using the upplutur, and then they didn't close completely here. There's an open here, where you can see this beautifully decorated thing we call brjóst or breast, and decorated, of course. Even this small thing here is so beautifully decorated. And they also started to wear it black. Either white or black, but mostly white, maybe a black for a widow. So the most popular dresses, traditional dresses in the 20th century is, of course, the upplutur. It's the most popular because it's the newest in the beginning of the 20th century. The young women started it, and I would say that about 60–70% of young women in Iceland got their own upplutur. Many of them kept on using them until they became very old. But their daughters, they didn't want to wear their mother's fashion. So upplutur was not very popular when I was young, for example, born 1962. But I can remember old women wearing upplutur. And my mother, she got her own upplutur, and some young women did that, but only used it as a festive dress, not daily dress. But the young women born around 1900 really wore these dresses for every day. But since the peysuföt has those older history, it developed for a longer time, they were always the high festive dresses. In the 20th century, young women had both peysuföt for going to the church, and then upplutur to wear in the afternoon when they had to go out shopping. In the morning they were something easier.
It was beautiful.
A huge thank you to Hildur at Anriki for this incredible tour through Icelandic dress history, and a huge thank you to Þjóðminjasafn, or the National Museum of Iceland, for allowing me to film the original garments. I appreciate you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this documentary, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for another video.